Good morning, everyone. Thrilled to have so many people here with us for this very important session. Why is it important? Because we are at the third edition already of the Board for Change program at Change Now. Today, we are living in unprecedented time of turbulence, and we are past the points of pledges or promises. Time is about action, right? But we know that change is never easy. Trust in institutions are declining, and many things are being challenged. Nevertheless, what gives me hope is that more and more people expect business to do good, to really solve the world's biggest challenges. And myself, I believe in business as a force for good. This is why boards are playing a pivotal role in the world. They don't sit anymore on the sidelines. No, they are at the very core, playing a pivotal role. This is what we are here for. The backlash is real. We are conscious about it. But it's not a signal to step back. No. It's a signal for us to turn our ambition into action and our hesitation into a momentum. Because whether we like it or not, planetary boundaries are here to stay. And if not us, then who? And if not now, then when? So without further ado, let me introduce you to an incredible leader. When I met him 10 years ago, I was in a boardroom of 58 CEOs of the world's largest company. And believe me, at that time, not many CEOs got it. This one did. He's a visionary. He is a pioneer, a true rock star of impact. Let's welcome on stage Paul Polman, the former CEO of Unilever, campaigner, and the author of Net Positive. Welcome, Paul.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is this new?
Yes, it's new, it's for you.
New water. Good.
Thank you for being with us.
No problem.
It matters. So I'm going to ask the very first question that everybody in this room, so we have a crowd of 900 people. Most of them are board members, but not everyone. So we are living, as you were just mentioning at a breakfast, in an unprecedented time. So tell us how you feel about this very momentum and why the board of boards are becoming more critical than ever.
Yeah. Well, before I start my comments, let me say I feel very optimistic because there are many more opportunities than there have ever been. So take my comments in that context. But I do want to plug your book, though. This is Business as a Force for Good that Isabel wrote. She was signing it yesterday. I'm the only one who stole a copy without paying, as a Dutchman does. But I highly recommend you buy it. I was looking through it yesterday, preparing a little bit for today's talk, so my compliments. So don't forget to order this book. Anyway, I think to come to your question, what is the role of business in today's environment? It might be good to just realize, first of all, the context that we now have. Many of you have heard it many times in different panels yesterday and undoubtedly today, that these are unprecedented times. I mean, the shocks that we're going through, the economic shocks, the geopolitical shocks, the technology shocks, the geopolitical tension, and the list goes on. We've seen more coming at us at the same time than we've ever seen before. I personally think it's a good thing. When we had the financial crisis or when we had COVID, we had one thing to deal with. I leave it to you to answer if we did it well or not, but we just put bandages on the thing and we never really dealt with the real problem. When so many things are broken, some people call it the poly crisis, some people say we're entering a period of perma-crisis, but when so many things are broken, it's an ideal opportunity to really rethink how to put it back together. Now, the one thing that is for sure is that we don't know what's going to happen. This is a time of uncertainty. If some people sit here, and tell you this and this and this is exactly how you need to plan the next year, 5 years, or 10 years, I would look at the nose if the nose is growing and if the name is Pinocchio. We simply don't know. This is a period of incredible chaos that we've never had before. A new economic order that is being created that probably is a bigger change than anything we've seen since the 30s. And in my opinion, will stay with us for the next 5 or 10 years. Either we move to this fifth industrial order, or we create chaos for a longer period of time. And it's obviously for us to decide how to do that. Now, what is important in this is that the board start to realize that they increasingly need to move their mindsets away from just building shareholder value to increasingly building societal value.
That's
of course,
a big shift.
That is a big shift. That is a big shift.
Today, Paul, you're saying also that in this unprecedented time, sometimes you feel that board leaders are losing the courage to do so. What's your opinion here?
Well, my biggest fear is that too many, as I said, are still stuck in being stewards of the shareholders whilst they should be stewards of the future. There is this notion of fiduciary duties at the board, since we're talking boards, that I owe my whole life to the shareholder. So I don't know what is attractive to you to be a slave on a board to just make shareholder value if you don't have a deeper purpose of why we're here in the first place. That concept has never been attractive to me, nor is that really a good interpretation of what the fiduciary duties are in most, if not all, jurisdictions in the world. You need to be there to safeguard the long-term viability of companies, and the only way that you can safeguard the long-term viability of companies, which by the way is also in the interest of most of the shareholders, will be to look at optimizing the return for, by definition, all your stakeholders. And what has changed in this is that increasingly people are starting to realize that the stakeholders are not just the ones that, the voices you can hear, but there are also voices you can't hear, like the planet, like future generations.
So what did you do when you were at Unilever, for instance? What was the first thing that you did with your board?
Well, so the one thing, to finish my sentence there, is if I look at it now, I regret that in the conference rooms at Unilever, I put a chair, and it was an empty chair. People wanted to sit on it. I said, no, that chair is empty. People felt uncomfortable. What is that chair for? I said, that chair is for the citizens of this world that we serve, because the company had become very internally focused. I regret that I didn't put 2 more chairs there, one for planet Earth and one for future generations, because we would have probably faster taken better decisions. So coming...
A chair, sorry, I'm asking, an empty chair? Or
empty chairs. Well, yeah, because the future generation, you can't sit down yet, but there is infinitely more people coming in future generations than what we have seen in the past. And yet we have the audacity to destroy more in the last 50 years than in the whole history of humanity. So
that's a good call
we
to
know
action.
The statistics. Yeah, that's a small call to action. But so what I did at Unilever, I don't have many demands. I was surprised I got the job. I thought there were many people more qualified for the job. And I came in from the outside. It was the height of the financial crisis, so it was difficult. But my only request was actually to change the board. We had a wonderful... Yeah,
Why?
and well, we had a wonderful board without any doubt. We had 6 white Dutchmen and 6 white Englishmen, and they could disagree so strongly that they thought they were more diverse than they'd ever been or ever seen in the world. I don't know if you've ever seen a Brit and a Dutch in the same room, but it's an interesting discussion. So we had a very diverse board, and probably served the company well up to a point. But this was a company that for the last decade wasn't performing very well and had seen its business drastically decline, was in a selling mode. So as I needed a new management team, I changed about 75 of the top 100 people in the first year. And that was hard work, especially if you come in from the outside. I also had to be sure that the board was held to that same standard. So we moved right away to a 50-50 board in gender. We had 2 people from the Far East. We had 2 people from Africa. We had the first black woman from Harvard and Fudge. And we had a very diverse board. It happened to be 50% women. I was happy about that.
Which was
But
very
also,
pioneer at that time.
We certainly were the first company, and it still is the case now, actually. Once you have it, it changes the dynamics in the company. But I also had to look at people that had a skill set that was in line with what we needed. So the 2 things I did really was create the right environment, hopefully, to succeed, although you never know when you do that. So one of them is to have the right board. They're becoming very important. And these people need to be aligned with the direction you want to take the company. They need to challenge you. They need to be diverse. They need to bring their different skill sets to the board. But they also need to be partners in that journey. And then the second thing I did, which was equally important, stop quarterly reporting, stop giving guidance.
This was so courageous at that time.
Well, I don't know if it was courageous or if it was stupid, but you needed to create space for people to do the right thing. People are in many companies, too myopically focused on the short term.
I have not heard about another company listed on the stock exchange market that did the same thing.
Yeah, regretfully, very few followed. But what we saw when we did that was, obviously, the energy in the company was more towards value creation, which you don't do in a quarter. A value creation you do over 5 years, 10 years. It doesn't mean you don't deliver. I always separate that. People are afraid if you say you run your business for the long term, you don't deliver for the short term. In fact, the opposite happens. You deliver better for the short term to have an even better result for the long term. But we stopped that. And the reason was really to move the boundaries to change people's behavior. So what we also saw happening as a result of that, our shareholder base became more longer term. Because instead of this explaining on the call that Ramadan shifts every year or that there was a bad month for ice cream because the sun wasn't shining, we could talk more of the longer term strategy. And that tends to attract higher quality shareholders that are more interested in your company.
Oh, this is so interesting because we're here to discuss the role of boards. Of course, based on what you're saying, it's all about people, but you also have a vision and an influence about your shareholder.
Oh, absolutely. The board represents the shareholders, if you put it in that framework, and I don't disagree with that. But who are your shareholders? You know, a company like Unilever has millions of shareholders. And one wants you to split up the company. One wants you to pay more dividends. One wants you to buy companies and grow. None of them has ever run Unilever, may I add. And if you would listen to all of them, I think you'd be bankrupt before you know it. So many of them are not shareholders. And now in companies, in 7 months, the total market cap of companies turns over. So many of them are what I call share speculators, and we should change the names. You know, you're a share speculator, you've held the stock for 3 or 4 years, you're a shareholder. So, and start to identify them. But we shouldn't dance to the tunes of the shareholders. That's a very simple concept and a very simple soundbite. We should actually be more proactively, and the board should play a role in that, seek the right shareholders to support the strategies that the board is obviously delegating to management. And it takes time. And even in the case of Unilever, it took probably 5 years to see a fundamental change in the shareholder base. I certainly discovered naively that it was easier to lose shareholders by telling them you don't like them than to attract new shareholders. You know, you cannot talk your way out of things you've behaved yourself into. So you have to earn the right to get new shareholders. And that takes a little longer.
It's all about alignment and aligning words and action. And maybe let me interrupt you for a second, because we have something very unique in this fireside chat. We have prepared, and please, I'm looking at the people backstage. Please stand on the screen the QR code. We have a QR code because we are all very lucky to have Paul with us today, but you are also very lucky because it's a moment where you can ask Paul any question. regarding, please, the role of boards, because this is a
Thanks.
panel about boards. Otherwise,
I appreciate it.
And I'm going to grab my phone. We're going to select a couple questions. So we won't have time to ask everyone questions. But one question already coming in. Paul, interesting one. How can we ensure that the board is accountable for the next generation?
By having the discussions and by educating the boards, that would be one thing. It was interesting, and things are changing so fast, and we were pioneering so many things that I couldn't keep my learning up at a speed that was different than the board speed. That is very important, that you keep the board with you. So we installed these learning sessions, and these learning sessions were always the day before the board meetings. We had, at Unilever, we had 8 board meetings a year or 9 board meetings, don't quote me. But I said to the boards, you know, there are so many things we need to learn on this changing landscape already then, especially in the areas of sustainability at that time, or the climate science and other things that were relatively new. How to do value creation. Technology was equally developing then. So we installed these learning sessions, and
the learning were on the ground?
It was the same
youth?
moment that I would actually learn things, and management would present. Sometimes people would come in from the outside, but I said to the board, it's voluntary, because, you know, there are only so many things you can ask a board to do. But it had 100% attendance all the time, so we learned together. I think that's part of holding each other accountable, is to be part of a team. Having a distance to hold people accountable, but at the same time being part of a team is very well possible. The other thing I did was important was we had a very rigorous performance management system in Unilever that was the same for everybody, including myself. And I actually put the board on the same system. So this notion that you are a 9-year board member, or that you automatically get, you know, it's very rare that shareholders vote you off. Some board members, you know, if you look in the US now, 1 in 5 board members is over 75 years old. You know, they weren't even there when they were running the companies. The CD wasn't even invented, let alone what they think about AI. You have to be pretty smart at 75 to keep up with that. So we held the board members to that same standard, and then said with these performance reviews, it's also not a given. It used to be a given that you would be 9 years on the Unilever board, but that was not the case anymore after that.
I have other questions. So that's a good one compared to what you just said. So how do you envision the role of AI and tech in the boardroom today?
Well, we can talk a lot about AI, and I will leave the discussions out on ethics of AI, but it is clear that geopolitics has taken over, that you don't have a global standard, that you probably see bifurcation of systems emerging in the world. I imagine Europe will have a different standard than the US. China might have a different standard. India will come in. So how AI is going to shape out in different parts of the world might be slightly different. But I think the AI is more than technology. If you look at surveys now, and I don't know if they are all correct, but they say that the bulk of CEOs or the bulk of boards see AI as a way to save, to efficiencies, to change processes like SNOP, you know, sales, operating planning, that type of thing. But I think it misses the bigger picture. I think the AI possibilities that we have allow you to completely rethink your business models. And some of the leading companies are doing that. Rethink your governance, rethink your contract of trust that you have with society. And so if you see this as an enabler, it's not an end in itself, but if you see this as an enabler, it could become actually your best friend to convert your company to truly being a net positive, sustainable company.
This is so powerful to have AI as an enabler and see that as a catalyst of change, helping your companies, your board, and your governance move forward. So last question before we close, because you know that it's all about leadership, always has been, always will be. What does it truly take as a leader of the board to act as stewards for better futures? If there was one thing.
Well, there's never one thing, so this is a very difficult question. But what we saw in COVID, we saw a bifurcation between companies that were myopically focused on the shareholder and companies that were run for multiple stakeholders. And the companies that were run for multiple stakeholders had embedded sustainability in the core of their operations. It actually became their strategy, embraced partnerships, thought long term, had a strong purpose of why they were running these businesses. These companies were doing better than the ones myopically focused on the shareholder. But interestingly, we also saw for the first time a clear bifurcation in leadership, where companies that had leaders, and this includes the board, leaders with a high level of empathy, a high level, a strong purpose. Purpose and empathy results in courage. So a strong courage, pioneers in a sense, embracing partnership, unlocking that energy. These companies were, you know, for employees in very uncertain times, provided a beacon, and they were doing significantly better. So this bifurcation of leadership is happening. So what we now need is leaders that think net positive, that don't think as sustainability as a side hobby. You see too many companies dropping it now like flies in 2 seconds. It tells you that they are in the CSR mode, that it hasn't really been embedded in the core of the company. So they didn't really believe in DE. How can you drop DE&I because a president makes a phone call? You must have a serious problem believing in gender if you overtly would do that. How can you drop ESG within a minute because there's a little bit of pressure? You must have a serious problem of being convinced that it drives your business or not. So the good boards understand that it drives it. The good boards think net positive. They think restorative, reparative in a world that is already overshooting its planetary boundaries.
If you have not read the Net Positive book of Paul,
it's worth reading.
Definitely read it.
And a good board, the last comment would be, a good board knows that these issues are of such magnitude that we all need to work together to address them. They go beyond their companies. They go into
leadership
with governments, in advocacy, not in lobbying, in advocacy, in partnerships with industries, etc.
I'm going to finish with Paul about a story that you wrote not so long ago that I love. Is you say that when you tell story to your children or your grandchildren,
right,
that not a single one ends with the hero giving up.
Right, exactly.
So I have a little surprise for you. I love surprises.
Okay.
There is, for me, my favorite book that I read to my kids, but not only to my kids. It's called The Little Prince.
Ah, good.
From Saint-Exupéry.
Yeah, yeah.
And why do I love it? Because there are so many relevant things in this book, especially the one saying we don't inherit the earth from our parents, but we borrow it from our children. So I have a book of The Little Prince for you, but signed by the next generation of leaders that are the delegates of this Change Now event.
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
I'm going to get it to you. 1 sec.
I have to say that's better than Machiavelli's Prince book, so I'm not sure that's fully applicable anymore. Am I? Wow, look at this. You are too nice.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you, Paul.
for my 7 grandchildren. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Okay. I'll see you later. Thank you. Thanks.
Merci.